Before you throw away the clippings from your next haircut, you need to see what keratin does to a container tomato plant. I ran a 60-day experiment using human hair as a slow-release nitrogen fertilizer on potted tomatoes, and the results are genuinely shocking. What started as a curiosity turned into one of the most promising container gardening techniques I've ever tried. And today, I'm walking you through exactly why it works, how to do it right, and where the science stands on keratin soil amendments for growing bigger, healthier tomatoes in containers. But before we dig in, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever put something unusual in your garden soil that actually worked? Drop it below. I read every single comment. So why would anyone bury human hair in a tomato pot? Here's the thing. Hair isn't just dead protein sitting on your head. It's made almost entirely of keratin, one of the toughest structural proteins found in nature. The same stuff that makes up feathers, hooves, wool, and fingernails. According to Oregon State University, human hair contains 51% carbon, 21% oxygen, 17% nitrogen, 6% hydrogen, and 5% sulfur. That nitrogen number is the one every gardener should pay attention to. Studies going back to the 1960s confirmed that human hair contains roughly 15% nitrogen by weight, and nitrogen is the single most important nutrient for vegetative growth in tomato plants. Nitrogen is everywhere, making up about 78% of our atmosphere. But plants can't use atmospheric nitrogen directly. It has to be fixed into compounds like nitrate before roots can absorb it from soil. That's why we buy fertilizer. That's why we compost. That's why we add amendments. And that's exactly what makes hair such an interesting option, because it essentially functions as a slow-release nitrogen capsule, wrapped in one of the most resilient proteins on the planet. That slow-release quality matters enormously, especially for container gardening. If you've ever grown tomatoes in pots, you know the struggle. Container-grown plants burn through nutrients far faster than their in-ground counterparts because there's simply less soil to draw from. You're constantly top-dressing, liquid feeding, worrying about whether your plants are getting enough. Tomatoes are heavy feeders to begin with, and when you confine them to a 10 or 12-gallon pot, those nutrient demands multiply. You need fertilizer that sticks around. Hair does exactly that. Unlike banana peels that break down in a few weeks, or fish emulsion that delivers a quick hit and fades, hair can take 1 to 2 years to fully decompose in soil. It sits there, slowly releasing nitrogen as soil microorganisms gradually break down the keratin structure. Bacteria like Pseudomonas and Bacillus chip away at it, while fungi like Aspergillus and Penicillium join in. The result is a steady, sustained trickle of nitrogen that feeds your tomato plant over months, not days. This isn't fringe gardening advice. Serious university research backs it up. In December of 2008, Dr. Vlacho Zeljazkov and his team at Mississippi State University, he's now based at Oregon State University, published a landmark study in hort technology. They tested whether commercially available non-composted hair waste cubes could support plant growth as a sole nutrient source, incorporating hair into growing media at 2.5%, 5%, and 10% by weight, then measuring results across multiple horticultural crops. What they found was remarkable. Plant yields increased for hair-fertilized plants compared to untreated controls across the board. In Dr. Zeljazkov's own words, once the degradation and mineralization of hair waste starts, it can provide sufficient nutrients to container-grown plants and ensure similar yields to those obtained with the commonly used fertilizers in horticulture. Similar yields to conventional fertilizers. From hair, he went even further, stating that human hair proved to be among the best fertilizers for every crop he and his colleagues tested it on. NBC News picked up the story. Live Science ran it. The findings spread across major outlets because the idea was so unexpected and the results were so compelling that people couldn't look away. Now, this isn't a magic bullet, and the same Mississippi State research makes that clear. Hair outperformed untreated controls, but it produced lower yields than synthetic inorganic fertilizers for fast-growing crops like lettuce and wormwood. The reason is timing. Keratin is extremely stable, and those disulfide bonds, hydrogen bonds, and hydrophobic interactions that make hair so tough also make it resistant to quick breakdown. For a crop like lettuce that you're harvesting in 30 to 45 days, hair simply hasn't had enough time to release meaningful nutrients. Tomatoes are a completely different story. You're growing them for 3, 4, sometimes 5 months in a container, and if you're growing indeterminate varieties like Sun Gold, Black Krim, or most beefsteaks, that season stretches even longer, long enough for that keratin to start breaking down and delivering nitrogen right when the plant needs it most, during fruiting and heavy production. Determinate varieties have a more compressed harvest window, so keep that in mind when deciding how much you're relying on hair versus faster-acting amendments. That's why heavy feeders with longer growing seasons, things like tomatoes, peppers, squash, and corn, are the ideal candidates for hair-based fertilization. Quick question while we're here, and I'm genuinely curious. Would you actually try burying hair in your tomato pots? Or does the idea gross you out a little? Let me know in the comments, yes or no. So how do you actually do this? It's simpler than you'd expect. Start by collecting hair clippings from your own hairbrush, your barber, or your local salon. Then cut or shred the hair into small pieces, and this step matters. Dropping a tangled wad of hair into your pot creates problems. Uncomposted hair can form dense, water-repellent mats that block air and moisture movement through your soil, which is the opposite of what you're after. Finely cut hair should be worked directly into your potting mix. A solid ratio based on the research is roughly 3 parts growing medium to 1 part hair by volume, mixed in at planting time. For best drainage and aeration, use a quality potting mix amended with perlite or vermiculite, not straight garden soil, so that hair incorporation doesn't compress airflow further. You can also place a small handful of finely cut hair at the bottom of your pot, grow bag, or fabric pot before adding soil and transplanting your seedling. The hair will sit in the root zone and slowly release nutrients as the season progresses. For more precision, the Mississippi State research tested incorporation rates of 2.5%, 5%, and 10% by weight. For a 5-gallon pot, you're not talking about large quantities. An ounce or 2, mixed thoroughly into the potting soil, is plenty to get started. Composting the hair first is another solid option. Added to an active compost pile, hair breaks down in about a month, dramatically speeding up nutrient availability. If you go that route, the general recommendation is a maximum annual application of about 10 pounds of finished hair-amended compost per 100 square feet of garden space. For container sizing, cherry tomatoes need at least a 2-gallon pot, roughly 10 inches in diameter. Standard slicing tomatoes need at least 4 to 5 gallons, 12 to 14 inches wide and deep. Bigger is always better though. 10-gallon containers, grow bags, or fabric pots give you maximum production and more soil volume for those hair amendments to work their slow-release magic. Now, here's something critical to understand before you swap out your entire fertilizing routine. Hair is a nitrogen amendment. That's it, And tomatoes need more than nitrogen. They need the full NPK picture plus key minerals to really perform. Phosphorus is essential for root development, especially early in the season, and hair simply won't supply it. A bone meal or rock phosphate addition at planting covers that gap. Potassium is equally important during fruiting. Tomatoes are consuming potassium heavily when they're setting and sizing fruit, and again, hair won't provide this. A potassium-rich amendment, like green sand, kelp meal, or a balanced organic fertilizer, should run alongside your keratin program. And then there's calcium. Hair doesn't provide meaningful calcium, and calcium deficiency is the single most common cause of blossom end rot in container tomatoes. That dark, sunken patch on the bottom of your fruit isn't a watering problem alone. It's a calcium delivery failure. Adding crushed eggshells, gypite, or a calcium-specific supplement to your potting mix addresses this directly. Think of hair as completing the nitrogen leg of the stool. You still need to build the rest of it. It's also worth monitoring your soil pH if you're using hair long-term. As keratin breaks down, it can gradually influence soil acidity. Most container tomatoes prefer a pH between 6 and 6.8, and drifting outside that range will lock out nutrients even when they're present. A simple pH test every few weeks keeps you on top of it. Now let's talk about something that's emerged in more recent research, because this is where things get genuinely exciting. A study published in FEM's Microbiology Ecology in March of 2024 found that keratin-rich soil amendments don't just feed plants, they actually reshape the microbial communities in your soil. The researchers found that keratin-amended soils became enriched in bacterial families previously associated with disease-suppressive soils. In other words, adding keratin to your growing medium may help protect your plants from soil-borne diseases. A separate study backed this up with hard numbers. After 90 days of keratin hydrolysate application, the total number of beneficial soil microorganisms increased by over 3 times, ammonifying bacteria more than doubled, and phosphate-solubilizing bacteria climbed significantly. Meanwhile, pathogenic fungi dropped to just 32% of what was found in untreated control soil. Your soil doesn't just get more nitrogen, it gets healthier, more alive, and more resistant to the very diseases that plague container tomatoes. Then, in February of 2025, researchers in Korea published a study specifically investigating hydrolyzed human hair as an organic fertilizer for hot pepper crops. They found it increased plant growth and delivered measurable protection against wilt disease. This is cutting-edge research, and it keeps pointing in the same direction. Keratin soil amendments work, and they offer benefits well beyond simple nutrition. Before you rush to your bathroom drain, though, we need to talk about the legitimate concerns. The biggest issue is chemically treated hair. Dyed, permed, bleached, or heavily styled hair can introduce toxins, heavy metals, and synthetic residues into your soil. Hair keratin has a strong natural propensity for absorbing heavy metals through its thiol groups, those sulfur-containing bonds that give hair its structure. Heavy metal concentration in hair can run as much as 50 times higher than in blood and urine. That's a real concern when you're growing food. Raw, clumped hair dropped directly onto garden beds without preparation is both ineffective and potentially damaging. It tangles, repels water, creates anaerobic mats, and can inhibit seed germination. Clean, shredded, properly incorporated hair and salon floor sweepings tossed on top of your tomato cage are two very different things. Some researchers have noted that further study is necessary to determine whether human hair waste is fully safe as fertilizer for edible crops. That's a fair caveat. If it concerns you, stick to untreated, undyed hair and consider composting it first. The composting process helps break down any residual chemicals and produces a safer, more homogeneous product. The environmental angle on all of this is enormous. Roughly 810,000 tons of human hair waste gets generated worldwide every year. Salons in the United States and Canada alone discard about 31.5 tons of hair every single day. The beauty industry generates approximately 877 pounds of waste per minute, totaling close to 500,000 pounds daily. According to the Green Salon Collective, 98% of the 6,700 tons of salon hair waste discarded annually ends up in landfill, where it slowly releases ammonia and nitrates that contaminate soil and groundwater. Think about that. We're burying a high nitrogen organic material in landfills when we could be using it to grow food. It's genuinely absurd. Companies are starting to catch on. Green Circle Salons has built a business around recycling salon waste. The Green Salon Collective has diverted over 225 tons of waste from landfill since opening in 2020. Click Recycle produces biodegradable mulch from human hair for orchards, reducing soil erosion, suppressing weeds, and cutting herbicide use. There's even a U.S. patent for a hydratable keratin soil amendment that forms a hydrogel when wet, increasing water retention while simultaneously providing organic and inorganic nutrients. But 70% of salon professionals still don't know that recycling streams for hair waste even exist. And that's a massive gap between what science tells us is possible and what's actually happening on the ground. A few bonus benefits are worth mentioning too. Hair placed around plants can deter snails, since the strands entangle soft-bodied creatures and create a physical barrier they struggle to cross. Some gardeners report that human hair also deters deer, because prey animals tend to avoid the scent of potential predators. The research on deer repellency is mixed, and experts at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden warn that hair, soap flakes, and spinning pie plates are common myths that don't hold up when deer are truly hungry. In areas with moderate deer pressure and plenty of alternative food sources, though, anecdotal reports suggest it can help. Just don't bet your entire garden on it. What you can count on is the structural benefit. As hair decomposes in container soil, it releases organic matter that binds soil particles together, creating a more porous and stable structure with improved water retention. In a container environment where compaction and drainage issues are constant battles, that's a real and measurable advantage. Research published in 2026 by Ankara University compared sheep wool, poultry feathers, and human hair as organic fertilizers for lettuce cultivation. That study reinforced what the Mississippi State team found nearly 2 decades earlier. Keratin-rich wastes are legitimate, effective organic fertilizers that promote resource recycling and soil fertility. The science keeps building, study after study, year after year. So here's where this lands. If you're growing tomatoes in containers, and you're looking for a free, sustainable, slow-release nitrogen source that also improves soil structure, supports beneficial microorganisms, and may even help suppress disease, human hair is one of the most underrated amendments available to you. Cut it fine. Mix it into your potting soil alongside perlite for drainage. Compost it first if you want faster results. Use clean, untreated hair when possible, especially for edible crops. Pair it with a calcium supplement to guard against blossom end rot, a phosphorus source for root development, and a potassium-rich amendment during fruiting. Because hair alone won't replace everything your tomatoes need. It's not an instant solution. It's a long game. But tomatoes are a long game too, and that's exactly why this pairing works so well. 810,000 tons of this stuff gets thrown away every single year worldwide. Your next haircut could be feeding your container tomatoes instead of filling a landfill. That's not just good gardening, that's common sense. Save those clippings. Your tomato plants will thank you. Now I want to hear from you. Are you going to save your next haircut for your tomato pots? And what's the strangest free fertilizer you've ever used in your garden? Tell me in the comments. If this changed the way you think about that hair in your brush, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to Plant Care Secrets TV so you never miss a gardening secret, and tap that join button to become a channel member. You'll get exclusive perks and also help support deep dive videos just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.